Captain Zexthal stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the stars drift by through the main viewing screen. The Void's Edge was a good ship, fast and strong, built for patrol work along the outer edges of the Korathian Empire. For 300 years, his people had ruled this part of space. They were warriors, proud and powerful, and most other species feared them. Today felt like any other day. Zexthal walked between the control stations where his crew worked. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of computers and the occasional beep from the sensors. His second officer, Karthis, sat at the navigation station, plotting their course through empty space. "Anything interesting out there?" Zexthal asked, looking over at the sensor station. "Nothing, sir," replied his sensor operator, a young Korathian named Veltar. "Just empty space and distant stars." "Same as always," Zexthal nodded. Border patrol was usually boring work. They rarely found anything more exciting than space debris or the occasional merchant ship. But someone had to watch the borders of the Empire. Someone had to make sure no enemies tried to sneak into Korathian space. The captain had heard some strange reports lately. Intelligence officers talked about a new species called humans. They said these creatures had just learned to travel faster and light. The reports made them sound weak and primitive. Their ships were supposed to be small and poorly armed. Their technology was supposed to be hundreds of years behind Korathian science. Zexthal found it hard to believe any species could be that backward and still achieve faster than light travel. But the intelligence reports were clear. These humans had only been traveling between stars for a few decades. They were new to space, new to the galaxy, and probably scared of everything they found out here. "Sir," Veltar's voice suddenly cut through the quiet. "I'm getting something on the long-range sensors." Zexthal moved quickly to the sensor station. "What do you have?" "Unknown vessel, approaching from Sector 7. It's big enough to be a warship, but the design doesn't match anything in our database." The captain studied the readings on the screen. The ship was there, definitely real, moving toward their position at a steady pace. It wasn't trying to hide or run away. That was either very brave or very stupid. "Can you identify it?" Zexthal asked. Veltar worked at his controls for several minutes. "Getting some details now, sir. The ship's computers are broadcasting an identification signal. It says .2NS Defiant. United Nations ship Defiant." Zexthal felt a cold smile cross his face. United Nations. That's the human government, isn't it? "Yes, sir. According to our files, that's what they call their ruling body. So we have a human warship, all alone out here in our space." Zexthal walked back to his command chair and sat down. "How big is it?" "Smaller than us, sir. Maybe 2/3 our size. It looks like a military vessel, but the armor plating appears primitive. Thick metal plates instead of energy shields." The captain laughed. "Primitive indeed." "Karthis, open." "A communication channel." "Channel open, sir." Zexthal stood up and faced the main screen. "Human vessel, this is Captain Zexthal of the Korathian Empire ship Void's Edge. You are in violation of our territory. Identify yourself and state your purpose." The screen flickered and changed. Instead of stars, it now showed the bridge of the human ship. The creature standing in the center looked strange to Korathian eyes. It had pale skin, short brown hair, and wore a dark blue uniform. The human was smaller than a Korathian warrior, with no natural armor or claws. It looked soft and weak. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the UN's Defiant," the human said. His voice was calm and steady. "We're conducting a routine patrol of this sector. According to our charts, this is neutral space." Zexthal laughed again. "Your charts are wrong, human. This space belongs to the Korathian Empire. It has been ours for 3 centuries. Morrison's expression didn't change. Captain, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. We have no record of any territorial claims in this region. Perhaps we could discuss this matter diplomatically. There is nothing to discuss, Zexthel said, his voice getting harder. You will surrender your vessel immediately. Your crew will be taken for questioning. Your ship will be impounded. The human captain was quiet for a moment. Behind him, Zexthel could see other humans moving around their bridge. They looked busy but not panicked. That was strange. Most species would be terrified by now. I'm afraid I can't do that, Captain, Morrison finally said. The UNZ Defiant is a sovereign vessel of the United Nations. We're operating under international law and the Geneva Accords. Zexthel had never heard of these Geneva Accords, but he didn't care. Human, you seem to misunderstand your situation. You have one small ship. I have a Korathian cruiser with enough firepower to turn your vessel into scrap metal. Surrender now, or we will take your ship by force. Morrison nodded slowly. I see. Karthus, are our defensive systems online? A female voice answered from somewhere off-screen. All systems green, Captain. Shields at full power. Point defense systems active. Very good. Captain Zexthel, this is your final warning. Withdraw from this area immediately, or we will consider your vessel hostile. Zexthel couldn't believe what he was hearing. This tiny human ship was threatening him? Him, a captain in the mighty Korathian fleet? The idea was so ridiculous he almost laughed again. Veltar, target their engines with a plasma burst. Low power. Just enough to disable them. Targeting systems locked, sir. Fire. The Void's edge shuddered slightly as the plasma cannon fired. A bright green bolt of energy streaked across space toward the human ship. Zexthel watched it hit Defiant's hull and waited for the human vessel to stop moving. Instead, something impossible happened. The energy bolt simply disappeared. The human ship kept flying as if nothing had touched it. What happened? Zexthel demanded. Veltar stared at his instruments in confusion. Sir, the energy bolt was absorbed somehow. Their defensive systems redirected the plasma into their power grid. They actually got stronger from our attack. For the first time since the conversation began, Captain Morrison smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Captain Zexthel, the human said, that was a mistake. Captain Jake Morrison stood perfectly still on the bridge of the UNS Defiant. The smile had left his face, replaced by the cold expression of a professional soldier. Around him, his crew moved with quiet efficiency that would have impressed any military observer. Commander Rodriguez, battle stations, Morrison said, without taking his eyes off the Korathian captain on the main screen. Aye, sir. All hands. Battle stations. This is not a drill. Amy Rodriguez's voice echoed through the void. Ship's communication system. Red lights began flashing throughout the corridors, and the soft hum of the ship's engines changed to a deeper, more powerful sound. Lieutenant Ben Parker, at the tactical station, began running through his weapons checks. Captain, all defensive systems are online. Point defense grid is active. Weapons are charged and ready. Good. Maintain defensive posture only. Do not target their ship unless I give the order. Morrison turned his attention back to the Korathian. Captain. Zexthel looked confused and angry. His crew was talking quickly in their own language, probably trying to figure out what had just happened. Captain Zexthel, Morrison said calmly, your weapon had no effect on our vessel. I suggest you reconsider your current course of action. The alien captain's eyes narrowed. Impossible. Korathian plasma weapons can cut through any known armor. Your ship should be dead in space. Our defensive systems are designed to handle energy weapons, Morrison replied. Your plasma bolt was converted to useful energy, and fed into our power grid. Thank you for the free recharge. Behind Morrison, Chief Engineer Maya Foster called out from her station. Captain, that energy boost brought our reserves up to 105%. All systems running smoothly. Zexthel's second officer, Karthus, leaned over and whispered something urgent in the captain's ear. The Korathian's face changed as he listened. His confident expression began to show the first signs of doubt. Human, Zexthel said, his voice less certain than before. Even if your shields can absorb one plasma bolt, they cannot withstand a full bombardment. Surrender now, and my crew will treat you with respect. Morrison shook his head slowly. Captain, I've been trying to handle this diplomatically, but you fired on a United Nations vessel without provocation. That makes this a hostile action under international law. International law means nothing out here, Zexthel snapped. This is Korathian space. We are the law. Commander Rodriguez, Morrison said without turning around, please send a message. To Fleet Command. Inform them we have encountered a hostile alien vessel that has fired upon us without warning. Message sent, Captain, Rodriguez replied. Admiral Knox's battle group is 6 hours away at maximum speed. The mention of a battle group made several Korathians on the enemy bridge look nervous. Veltar, their sensor operator, began working frantically at his controls. Sir, Veltar called out, I'm detecting no other human ships in this sector. The nearest vessels are far beyond sensor range. Zexthel straightened up, his confidence returning. You are bluffing, human. You are alone, just as we thought. Morrison's expression didn't change. I never said they were close, Captain. I said they were coming. Lieutenant Sam Chun at the weapons station turned to look at Morrison. Captain, their targeting systems are locking onto us again. Multiple weapon batteries this time. Acknowledged. Continue defensive posture. Morrison stepped closer to the main screen. Captain Zexthel, I'm going to give you one more chance to resolve this peacefully. Stand down your weapons and withdraw from this area. We have no desire for conflict. The Korathian captain laughed, but it sounded forced. You? Speak of peace while your ship bristles with weapons. I can see gun ports along your hull. Those are defensive systems, Morrison said. However, if you continue to threaten my ship and crew, they can quickly become offensive systems. Security Chief Kyle Anderson stepped up beside Morrison. Captain, I've got Marines standing by if we need a boarding party. Noted, Chief. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. On the Korathian bridge, Zexthel was talking quickly with his officers. They seemed to be arguing about something. Finally, the alien captain turned back to face Morrison. Human, your ship is. Impressive, but you are still outnumbered. We have over 300 warriors aboard this vessel. How many crew do you carry? 68, Morrison answered honestly. Zexthul smiled. 68 against 300. Your mathematics are poor, human. Quality over quantity, Captain, Morrison replied. But I'd rather not test that theory if we can avoid it. The Korathian captain stood up from his command chair. I grow tired of this conversation. You will surrender immediately, or we will disable your ship and take your crew by force. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was colder than before. Captain Zexthel, you've made several mistakes today. First, you fired on my ship without warning. Second, you threatened my crew. And third, you assumed that because humans are new to space, we don't know how to fight. What are you saying, human? I'm saying that humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We've fought with sticks and stones, with swords, guns, with tanks and aircraft. We've fought on land, on sea, underwater, and in the air. Space is just another battlefield to us. Lieutenant Parker looked up from his tactical display. Captain, they're charging all weapons. 1 count 12 plasma. Cannons and 6 missile tubes. Understood. Maya, how are our systems? All green, Captain. Engines at full power. Defensive grid at maximum strength. We're ready for whatever they want to throw at us. Morrison nodded and turned back to the screen. Captain Zexthol, this is your final warning. Stand down your weapons and withdraw. If you fire on my ship again, I will consider it an act of war. The Korathian captain's face twisted with anger. You dare threaten the Korathian Empire? We have conquered star systems, while your species was still living in caves. Maybe so, Morrison said quietly. But we're not in caves anymore. Zexthol raised his hand, ready to give the order to fire. His crew tensed at their stations, waiting for the command that would unleash everything they had against the small human ship. Sir, Veltar called out suddenly. I'm reading some unusual energy signatures from their vessel. Their engines are producing power levels that should be impossible for a ship that size. Impossible or not, they cannot stand against Korathian firepower, Zexthol snarled. Target all weapons on their engine section. Full bombardment. Morrison saw the alien captain's hand start to fall and knew the time for talking was over. All hands brace for impact. Mr. Parker, prepare to return fire. Aye, sir. Railguns charged and ready. The Korathian captain's hand dropped. Fire! 12 plasma bolts and 6 missiles streaked across space toward the Un's Defiant. The human crew watched them come, steady and professional, ready for the battle that was about to begin. The space between the two ships lit up like a deadly fireworks show. 12 bright green plasma bolts raced toward the Un's Defiant, followed by 6 sleek missiles that left trails of blue exhaust behind them. On the Korathian bridge, Captain, Zexthol watched with satisfaction. No ship could survive that much firepower, but the human ship did something the Korathians had never seen before. Instead of trying to absorb the attack or run away, the Defiant suddenly moved sideways. Not slowly, like most ships when they change direction, but fast and sharp like a striking snake. What in the void are they doing? Karthus whispered. Staring at his navigation display, the human ship twisted and spun through space with movements that should have been impossible. The plasma bolts streaked past where the Defiant had been just moments before. The missiles tried to follow, but the human ship changed direction again, then again, moving in patterns that made no sense. How are they moving like that? Veltar called out from his sensor station. Those direction changes should crush their crew. On the human bridge, Captain Morrison stood calmly while his ship danced through the enemy fire. The artificial gravity. Systems kept everything steady inside, even as the Defiant performed maneuvers that would have killed anyone without proper protection. Nice flying, Rodriguez, Morrison said to his second-in-command. Thank you, sir. These aliens don't know much about combat maneuvering, do they? Lieutenant Ben Parker, at Tactical, shook his head. Their attack pattern is all wrong. They're firing like they expect us to just sit still and take it. Chief Engineer Maya Foster's voice came over the communication system from engineering. Captain, inertial dampeners are holding steady. Quantum drive is running at 110% efficiency. We can keep this up all day. Morrison nodded. The humans had learned long ago that space combat was about speed and movement. When they first started fighting, wars between Earth and Mars, both sides quickly discovered that the ship that moved the best usually won. Over decades of fighting each other, humans had perfected the art of space warfare. The Korathian missiles were still trying to catch the Defiant, but the human ship's point defense systems came online. Small laser turrets tracked each missile and destroyed them one by one. In less than 30 seconds, all 6 missiles were nothing but floating debris. Impossible, Zexthol breathed, watching his attack fail completely. Sir, Veltar reported, Their ship is accelerating toward us. They're not running away. The Korathian captain looked at his main screen in disbelief. The human ship was indeed flying straight at them, moving faster than any vessel its size should be able to move. "Are they trying to ram us?" Karthus asked. "No," Zexthol said slowly. "They're attacking." On the Defiance bridge, Lieutenant Sam Chun at the weapons station looked up at Morrison. "Captain, we're in range. Railguns are charged and ready to fire." Morrison studied the enemy ship on his screen. It was bigger than his vessel, but it moved like a drunk elephant compared to the Defiant. "Target their weapon systems first." "We want to disable them, not destroy them." "Aye, sir." "Targeting their plasma cannon clusters. Fire when ready." Sam Chun pressed the firing controls, and the UN's Defiance spoke with its real voice for the first time. Instead of energy weapons like the Korathians used, the human ship fired chunks of metal. But these weren't ordinary pieces of metal. They were tungsten slugs, each one weighing several kilograms, fired by electromagnetic railguns at incredible speed. The first railgun shot hit the Korathian ship's forward plasma battery. The tungsten slug was moving so fast it punched through the alien ship's shields like they weren't even there. The metal projectile tore through armor plating and destroyed the entire weapon cluster in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. "Direct hit," Chun reported. "Their forward weapons are offline." "What just happened?" Zexthel demanded, feeling his ship shake from the impact. "Sir, they fired some kind of projectile weapon. It went right through our shields," Veltar said, his voice shaking. "Our forward plasma battery is completely destroyed." The Korathian captain couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Projectile weapons? That's impossible. No one uses solid ammunition in space combat anymore." But the humans fired again, and another tungsten slug slammed into the Korathian ship's port weapon cluster. Then another shot hit their starboard guns. Each impact tore through the alien vessel's defenses like paper. "How are they doing this?" Karthus asked, watching his tactical display show weapon after weapon going offline. The problem was that the Korathians, like most spacefaring species, had focused their defensive technology on stopping energy weapons. Their shields could absorb plasma bolts and deflect laser beams, but they had never encountered an enemy that threw chunks of metal at significant fractions of the speed of light. Morrison watched the enemy ship take hit after hit. "Chun, how's our ammunition supply?" "Plenty left, sir. We've got enough tungsten rounds for a long fight." The Defiance spun around the much larger Korathian ship like a fighter plane attacking a bomber. The human vessel was smaller and faster, able to stay in the alien ship's blind spots while hammering it with railgun fire. "Sir," Foster called from engineering, "their return fire isn't even scratching our paint. Their plasma weapons can't track us fast enough." The Korathians were learning a hard lesson about human combat doctrine. Humans had spent centuries fighting each other in the asteroid belts and moons of their solar system. Every human warship was designed to hunt other human warships, and humans were very good at killing things that moved. "Captain," Rodriguez said, "they're trying to escape." Morrison looked at his screen and saw the Korathian ship slowly turning away, trying to run from the fight. But the Defiant was much faster. "Stay with them, Rodriguez." "Chun, target their engines next." "Aye, sir." Another railgun shot struck the Korathian ship's main engine cluster. The tungsten slug punched through the engine housing and destroyed critical power systems. The alien vessel shuddered and began to lose speed. On the Korathian bridge, alarms were screaming and smoke was filling the air. Half their weapons were destroyed, their engines were damaged, and they couldn't even hit the human ship. "Sir, Veltar said quietly, "I don't think we can win this fight." Zexthol stared at the main screen, watching the small human ship circle his much larger vessel like a predator playing with wounded prey. For the first time in his military career, the proud Korathian captain felt something he had never experienced before: fear. "Open a communication channel," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Channel open, sir." "Human ship," Zexthal called out. "We ... We request a ceasefire. We wish to discuss terms." Morrison's face appeared on the Korathian main screen. His expression was calm and professional, showing no anger or excitement despite the battle that had just taken place. "Captain Zexthal," the human said, "I'm willing to discuss terms. But first, you need to understand something. This wasn't a battle. This was a demonstration." The Korathian captain felt his blood turn cold. "A demonstration? You fired on my ship with everything you had," Morrison continued. "I've been fighting with one hand tied behind my back. If I had wanted to destroy your vessel, you would already be dead." Zexthal looked around his damaged bridge and realized the terrible truth. The human captain was right. Every shot had been precisely targeted to disable, not destroy. The humans could have killed them all at any time. "What do you want?" Zexthal asked. Morrison smiled, but it wasn't a cruel smile. It was the smile of a professional who had just finished a job. "I want you to go home and tell your leaders exactly what happened here today." Captain Zexthal stood in the ruins of his bridge, trying to understand what had just happened to his ship. Smoke drifted from damaged control panels, and several of his crew members were treating wounded comrades. The proud Korathian cruiser that had entered this battle confident of victory was now a crippled wreck, held at the mercy of a much smaller human vessel. "Damage report," Zexthal said quietly to his second officer. Karthus looked at his barely functioning display. "Sir, we've lost 60% of our weapons. Main engines are operating at 30% power. Our shields are down to minimum. Strength, life support is stable, but we've lost artificial gravity in sections 4 through 7. Casualties? 15 injured, sir. No deaths. It appears the humans were very careful about where they aimed their weapons." That last statement sent a chill through Zexthal's spine. The humans had crippled his ship without killing anyone. That kind of precision in the heat of battle spoke of experience and skill that went far beyond anything the Korathian military had ever encountered. On the main screen, Captain Morrison was still waiting for an answer. The human looked completely calm, as if the devastating battle had been nothing more than a training exercise. "Captain Morrison," Zexthal began, his voice uncertain. "What are your terms?" "Simple," the human replied. "You will allow my security team to board your vessel and inspect your ship. We need to make sure you're not carrying any weapons that might threaten civilian ships." The idea of allowing enemy soldiers aboard his ship made Zexthal's warrior pride rebel. But looking around his damaged bridge, he realized he had no choice. "How many of your people?" 6, Morrison said. "They'll be armed, but under strict orders not to use force unless attacked. I suggest you instruct your crew to cooperate." Zexthal wanted to refuse, but Veltar at the sensor station spoke up. "Sir, they have a shuttle launching from their ship. It's already on its way." The Korathian captain watched helplessly as a small human shuttle approached his vessel. It was smaller than their own shuttles, but moved with the same frightening agility as the warship. Within minutes, it had docked with the Korathian ship's main airlock. "Sir," Karthus said nervously, "shouldn't we prepare our security teams to resist the boarding party?" Zexthal looked at his second officer and shook his head. "With what? Half our security teams are injured, and our weapons couldn't even scratch their ship. What makes you think our hand weapons would be any more effective?" The truth was that Zexthal was curious about these humans. Everything about them defied what Korathian intelligence had reported. They were supposed to be weak and primitive. But their technology was clearly superior to anything the Empire possessed. Their tactics showed centuries of combat experience, and their weapons were designed with a brutal efficiency that suggested a species that had perfected the art of war. "Captain," Veltar called out, "the humans have entered the ship. Our security. Teams are reporting that they're moving through the corridors in formation. Any resistance? No, sir." The human leader identified himself as Security Chief Kyle Anderson. "He's requesting permission to come to the bridge." Zexthal thought about it for a moment. "Grant permission, but have our remaining security personnel escort them." Minutes later, the bridge doors opened and 6 humans entered. Zexthal got his first close look at the species that had just defeated his ship, and what he saw surprised him. The humans were smaller than Carathians, with no natural armor or claws. They looked soft and fragile compared to his own people, but they moved like soldiers. Each human carried a weapon that Zexthal didn't recognize, and they positioned themselves around the bridge with professional efficiency. Their leader, Anderson, stepped forward and looked around the damaged bridge with eyes that missed nothing. "Captain Zexthal?" Anderson asked. "I am he. Security Chief Kyle Anderson, uns defiant. We're here to conduct a safety inspection of your vessel." "Safety inspection?" Karthus asked angrily. "You attacked us." Anderson turned to look at the Korathian officer. "Sir, your captain fired on our ship without warning. Under the laws of armed conflict, that constitutes a hostile act. We responded with appropriate force." "Appropriate force?" Karthus's voice rose. "You destroyed half our ship." "No, sir," Anderson replied calmly. "We disabled your weapons and damaged your engines. If we had wanted to destroy your ship, there wouldn't be anything left but debris." One of the other humans, a woman with short blonde hair, stepped closer to examine the Carathian control panels. "Chief, take a look at this. Their weapon systems are all energy-based. No kinetic weapons at all." "Interesting," Anderson said. "That explains why they were so surprised by our railguns." Zexthal found himself asking, "What are railguns?" Anderson looked at him with something that might have been sympathy. "Electromagnetic accelerators that fire metal projectiles at extremely high velocity. Very effective against energy shields." "But why use such primitive weapons?" Veltar asked. From his station dot, the human woman answered, "Because they work. Energy weapons can be absorbed, deflected, or scattered. But a chunk of tungsten moving at 10% of light speed will go through pretty much anything." Anderson nodded. "We learned that lesson fighting each other. Energy weapons are flashy, but kinetic weapons get the job done." "Fighting each other?" Zexthal asked. "Human history is mostly the history of warfare," Anderson explained. "We've been fighting wars for thousands of years. Every weapon, every tactic, every piece of technology on our ships was developed to fight other humans." The humans spent the next hour going through the Korathian ship. Zexthal and his officers were forced to watch as the boarding party examined their weapons, their computers, and their defensive systems. The humans worked with quiet efficiency, taking detailed scans of everything they found. What disturbed Zexthal the most was how easily the humans moved through his ship. Despite being smaller than Carathians, they showed no signs of fatigue or difficulty. When they encountered a section where artificial gravity had failed, they simply activated magnetic boots and continued working as if nothing had changed. "Captain," Anderson said when the inspection was complete, "we found no illegal weapons or systems designed to target civilian vessels. Your ship is cleared to depart once you've completed repairs." "That's it?" Zexthal asked, surprised. "That's it. We're not conquerors, Captain. We're just making sure this sector remains safe for all ships, military, and civilian." As the humans prepared to leave, Zexthal found himself asking one more question. "Chief Anderson, how many wars has your species fought?" Anderson paused at the bridge entrance and thought for a moment. I honestly don't know, Captain. Humans have been fighting wars since before we had written language. We've fought with clubs and swords, with guns and bombs, with tanks and aircraft. Space is just the latest battlefield. And you always win? Anderson smiled, but it wasn't a cruel smile. Captain, the fact that we're having this conversation means we haven't always won. But we always learn. Every defeat teaches us something new. Every victory shows us what works. What did this battle teach you? That the Korathian Empire builds tough ships and trains brave crews, Anderson said honestly. But you've been fighting species that use the same kind of weapons you do. You've never faced an enemy that approaches warfare the way humans do. After the humans left, Zexthul stood alone on his damaged bridge, thinking about what Anderson had said. The Korathian Empire had conquered many worlds and defeated many enemies. But all of those enemies had fought like Korathians, with energy weapons and traditional tactics. These humans were different. They fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. Their weapons were designed to kill, their tactics were focused on winning, and their soldiers moved with the confidence of a species that had turned warfare into an art form. Sir, Karthus said quietly, what are we going to tell High Command? Zexthul looked at his second officer and realized he didn't know how to explain what had happened. How could he tell his superiors that a single human ship had defeated a Korathian cruiser without even trying? How could he make them understand that humanity wasn't the primitive species they thought it was? We're going to tell them the truth, Zexthul said finally. We're going to tell them that we found something in the darkness between stars, something that makes war the way we make art. And what is that, sir? Zexthul looked at the main screen, where the human ship was already moving away, continuing its patrol as if nothing had happened. Predators, he whispered. We found predators. Captain Zexthul sat in his command chair, watching his crew work desperately to repair their damaged ship. The Void's edge was slowly regaining power, but it would be hours before they could even think about leaving this cursed sector of space. The human ship, Annes Defiant, continued its patrol nearby, moving in lazy circles like a predator watching wounded prey. Sir, Veltar called out from his partially repaired sensor station. I'm detecting multiple contacts approaching from the direction of human space. Zexthul felt his blood turn to ice. How many? I'm reading 15 ships, sir. No, wait, 20. They're still coming. Karthus looked up from his damage control reports. Reinforcements? It appears so, Zexthul said quietly. He opened a communication channel to the human ship. Captain Morrison, we detect a large fleet approaching our position. Are these your reinforcements? Morrison's face appeared on the main screen. He looked completely relaxed, as if having 20 warships converge on his position was nothing unusual. That would be Admiral Knox's battle group, Captain. They're right on schedule. Admiral Knox? Lisa Knox, commander of the Third Fleet. She's coming to see what all the fuss is about. Zexthul tried to keep his voice steady. Captain Morrison, we have no desire for further conflict. Our ship is damaged and poses no threat to your fleet. I understand that, Captain. The Admiral just wants to meet you. First contact situations require proper protocol. As the human fleet drew closer, Veltar's sensor readings became more detailed. What he saw made him wish he had never joined the military. Sir, the lead ship is enormous. It's 3 times the size of our vessel. And the escorts, they're all the same class as the Defiant. 20 ships like the one that defeated us, Karthus whispered. But it was worse than that. As the human fleet took up positions around the crippled Korathian ship, Zexthul realized that this wasn't just a battle group. It was a demonstration of power unlike anything he had ever witnessed. Each human ship moved with the same deadly grace as the Defiant, and their formations showed the kind of coordination that came from years of working together. The largest ship, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed everything else in the area, moved to within communication range. Zexthul watched in fascination and terror as weapon ports opened along its hull, revealing enough firepower to destroy a small planet. Korathian vessel. A new voice came over the communication system. This is Admiral Lisa Knox of the United Nations Third Fleet. Request permission to speak with your commanding officer. Zexthul straightened in his chair. Admiral Knox, this is Captain Zexthul of the Korathian Empire vessel Void's Edge. Permission granted. The main screen changed to show a human woman in a dark blue uniform. She had short gray hair and eyes that seemed to see everything. Despite her smaller size compared to a Korathian, she radiated an authority that made Zexthul instinctively want to stand at attention. Captain Zexthul, Admiral Knox said, Captain Morrison has briefed me on your encounter. I understand your ship fired on his vessel without provocation. Admiral, there was a misunderstanding about territorial boundaries. Zexthul began. Knox held up a hand. Captain, I'm not here to assign blame. What's done is done. I'm here to discuss the future. The future? The future of relations between humanity and the Korathian Empire. You see, Captain, your attack on the Defiant represents the first hostile action taken against a United Nations vessel by your government. That makes this a matter of interstellar law. Zexthul felt sweat beading on his forehead, despite the cool air of the bridge. What are you saying, Admiral? I'm saying that your empire and mine need to have a conversation. A formal diplomatic conversation. Admiral Knox paused and seemed to consider her words carefully. Captain, I'm going to be honest with you. Your ship attacked mine, and Captain Morrison responded appropriately. But this encounter has shown us that there are serious gaps in our knowledge about each other. What kind of gaps? Well, for example, your intelligence reports apparently described humans as primitive and weak. Would you still agree with that assessment? Zexthul looked around his ruined bridge and thought about the casual efficiency with which the humans had destroyed his weapons. No, Admiral, I would not. Good. Similarly, our intelligence about the Korathian Empire is limited. We know you're a warrior culture that has expanded across multiple star systems, but we don't know much about your intentions or capabilities. Knox leaned forward slightly. Here's what I propose, Captain. You'll return to your space and deliver a message to your leadership. You'll tell them exactly what happened here today, and you'll invite them to open formal diplomatic relations with the United Nations. And if they refuse? Admiral Knox's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes grew colder. Captain, I have 20 ships in this battle group. The Third Fleet has over 200 vessels. The United Nations Space Navy has 12 fleets. The numbers hit Zexthul like physical blows. The Korathian Empire's entire military had fewer ships than one human fleet. If the humans had 12 such fleets, they could overwhelm the Empire without even trying. You're threatening us, Zexthul said quietly. No, Captain. I'm educating you. There's a difference. Admiral Knox stood up from her command chair. Captain Morrison tells me you asked about human warfare. Let me give you some context. Humans have been fighting organized wars for over 5,000 years. We've had global conflicts that killed millions of people. We've developed weapons that could destroy our entire planet. But you're still here, Karthus pointed out. Yes, we are. Do you know why? Because we learned that the best way to prevent wars is to be so good at fighting them that no one wants to start one. We call it peace through strength. Knox sat back down. The United Nations doesn't want to conquer the Korathian Empire, Captain. We have enough problems managing our own territory. But we also won't tolerate unprovoked attacks on our ships. What happens now? Zexthul asked. Now you go home and deliver my message. Tell your leaders that humanity is willing to discuss territorial boundaries, trade agreements, and mutual defense pacts. Tell them we prefer cooperation to conflict. And if there are more incidents like this one? Admiral Knox smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. Captain, what happened here today was a minor skirmish. One ship against one ship. If your empire decides to make this a real conflict, you'll discover what human warfare looks like when we're not being polite. The Admiral gestured to the ships surrounding them. This battle group represents less than 1% of human naval capability. We have weapons you haven't seen yet, tactics you haven't imagined, and a willingness to use both if necessary. Knox's expression softened slightly. But we'd much rather be friends than enemies. The choice is yours. The communication ended, leaving Zexthul staring at a blank screen. Around him, his crew continued their repairs in silence, each of them thinking about what they had just witnessed. Sir, Veltar said after several minutes, the human fleet is moving away. They're resuming their patrol patterns. Zexthul nodded absently. The humans were leaving, just like that. They had demonstrated their overwhelming superiority, delivered their message, and now they were going back to their routine duties, as if nothing had happened. That casual attitude was perhaps the most terrifying thing of all. To the humans, this entire encounter had been routine. They had fought, won, and moved on without breaking stride. It was just another day in the life of a species that had turned warfare into an art form. Karthus, Zexthul said finally. How? Long until we can return to Korathian space? 6 hours for basic repairs, sir. 12 hours for full operational status. Make it 6 hours. We have a message to deliver. As the Void's Edge limped away from the encounter, Zexthul began composing his report to High Command. How could he explain what had happened? How could he make them understand that humanity wasn't the primitive species they thought it was? The truth was simple but terrifying. Humans were predators who had learned to hunt among the stars. They had weapons that could punch through any defense, tactics that had been refined through millennia of warfare, and a military philosophy that valued victory above all else. Most frightening of all, they were offering friendship, but Zexthul had seen what happened to those who refused their friendship. The choice was simple. Accept humanity as an equal partner in the galaxy, or face them as an enemy. For the first time in 3 centuries, the Korathian Empire would have to decide whether to bow to a superior force. The age of human dominance had begun.